The ocean gave him no warning. One moment, Jack was checking his nets. The next, a man was clinging to life in the surf, bloodied, frostbitten, covered in scars, with a tattoo on his chest that looked like military code, but written in coordinates Jack didn't recognize. And the next morning, when a submarine surfaced at Jack's dock, silent and unmarked, he realized he hadn't rescued a man. He had pulled a secret out of the ocean that was never meant to be found. Welcome to Stories with Mr. Gray. If you love uncovering the truth and standing up for justice, hit subscribe, like and drop the flag of your country in the comments below. The sea had always spoken to Jack Harper in its own quiet language. The way the tide pulled harder before a storm, the shift in the air before a squall. He knew it better than he knew most people. At 57, Jack had long since traded war zones for crab pots, salt-scarred hands, and early mornings. Quiet life by choice. His days of adrenaline and orders had ended with a folded flag and a funeral, the day his son was buried in Arlington 12 years ago. Since then, it had been just him, his boat, and the water. He didn't talk much, didn't go into town unless he needed fuel or line. People called him the ghost in the cove. He didn't mind. Solitude was safer, cleaner, until that night, when the sea broke its silence. Waves slammed against the side of his old fishing boat like fists, rain slicing sideways in sheets. Jack gripped the wheel with white knuckles, aiming for the dock lights in the far distance. That's when he saw it, just a flash between the waves. At first, he thought it was driftwood until it moved. A hand, then a face, then nothing. Jack spun the boat and killed the throttle, tossed a lifeline into the churning blackness. The ocean roared, wild, hungry, but somehow, the figure grabbed hold. Jack hauled with everything he had left. The body hit the deck hard, bare-chested, half-frozen, lungs sucking for breath like he'd been dead and yanked back. He was out cold, but alive. Jack knelt beside him, assessing injuries with the calm focus of a man who'd done battlefield triage too many times. Then he saw it. A tattoo, spread across the man's chest, deep black ink carved into pale flesh. Not decorative, not random, coordinates, symbols, numbers, and beneath them, a Latin phrase burned into his skin. Mare profundum tacet. The deep sea is silent. Jack had spent years in Navy intel. He recognized military ink when he saw it. But this was something else. Something off-record. Something dangerous. But he thought within himself to give this a trial. He brought the man ashore to his cabin, a creaking wood and tin place resting on stilts above the rocks. Inside, the fire hissed to life. Jack laid the man down, wrapped him in towels and a Navy-issue wool blanket. Outside, the storm roared, but inside, it was quiet, too quiet. Jack stared at the stranger's still face. He was maybe late 30s, lean, with deep scarring on his shoulders and back. His skin was scratched, sunburnt, burned, but his expression, peaceful, like someone who had finally escaped something horrible. Jack should have called the Coast Guard, should have reported it, but he didn't. Something, gut instinct or maybe the ghost of his son whispering, told him to wait. Later that night, Jack tried to call it in. The shortwave radio crackled, then hissed, then nothing. His GPS screen blinked twice, then blacked out. Even the fire flickered unnaturally, as if the air had changed. And from the corner of the room, the man stirred. His lips moved. Whispers. Not in English. Something else. Deep. Measured. A chant? Pattern? Jack moved closer. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt them. Like sonar. Like something old and deep calling through the room. The hairs on Jack's arms rose. His gut twisted. This wasn't just a man lost at sea. This was a warning that something was coming. Something the ocean had tried to keep buried. By morning, the storm had passed. But the unease? It lingered. Jack stood on the deck sipping black coffee, staring at the man he'd dragged out of the sea now lying on his old army cot by the fire. still breathing, still out cold. The tattoo on his chest seemed darker in daylight, more defined, not just a military crest but almost etched, as if someone had burned secrets into his flesh. Just before noon, the man stirred. Jack sat nearby, quietly sharpening a blade, a habit from years gone by. The stranger jolted upright like a man waking from a nightmare, his hands darting to his sides as if searching for a weapon. Jack stood calmly. "Easy. You're safe here." The man's eyes snapped to him, piercing, cold, and impossibly alert for someone who'd nearly drowned. "Where?" he croaked. His voice was low, gravelly, almost unused. "You washed ashore during the storm. I pulled you out," Jack explained. Silence. Then the man looked down, saw the blanket, the fire, the bruises on his arms. His eyes scanned the room, quick and efficient, like a soldier clearing a room. "What day is it?" he asked. Jack told him. The man closed his eyes, taking a slow breath, but his jaw remained clenched tight, like he was bracing for something worse than pain. Over the next few hours, Jack watched him carefully. The man, who eventually gave a first name only Eli, refused medical help, food, or water at first. He barely spoke, but Jack noticed things. The way Eli never turned his back to the door. The way he moved, slow, deliberate, trained. And then there was his arm. When Eli stood to stretch, Jack saw deep scars running along his triceps and down his ribs, clean, symmetrical, like surgical incisions. But not recent. Not healing. Embedded. Jack didn't ask. Yet, that afternoon, Jack went to call the Coast Guard again. Just routine, at least to explain the boat damage from the storm. The radio still wouldn't work. Static. Then a strange tone. Like something was blocking the signal, not randomly but intentionally. Even his truck's ignition was dead. Batteries drained. Jack tapped the GPS screen. Dead.
No coordinates.
Just a blinking error message. Signal obstructed. Jack frowned. Out here in his cove? That didn't happen. Unless something or someone was jamming the frequencies. That night, Jack returned from checking his crab traps to find Eli sitting cross-legged on the dock, staring out at the water. His shirt was off. His fingers traced the tattoo on his own chest over and over, slowly, methodically, like trying to remember something buried. "You served?" Jack asked gently. Eli didn't look back. "I think so," he whispered. Jack walked closer. "You think so?" Eli finally turned to him. His face was pale, but his eyes held a storm inside. "They did things. To me." Jack froze. Eli tapped 2 fingers against his temple. "I don't remember who I was, but I remember pain. Labs. Wires. And that sound." He trailed off, his eyes flickering toward the sea. "What sound?" Jack asked. Eli didn't answer, but just then, as if summoned, the ocean shifted. A low hum, deep and unnatural, vibrated through the dock beneath their feet. Jack's eyes narrowed. That wasn't a boat engine. That wasn't natural tide. That was something beneath them. The humming returned again that night. Jack woke with a jolt at 2:11 a.m., the windows vibrating faintly. His dog, an old Labrador named Scout, whimpered, tail tucked, hiding in the closet. Jack walked outside, shotgun in hand. The water glowed faintly, not bright, but faint pulses under the surface. Blue, then green, then gone. Eli was already on the dock barefoot, chest rising and falling fast, hands clenching. "They've found me," he whispered. Jack stepped beside him. "Who?" Eli didn't answer, but Jack saw it. The flicker of dread in the eyes of a man who'd survived hell and knew it was coming back. By morning, the air was different. Still, heavy. Even the seagulls that usually fought over bait scraps were gone. Jack stood on the dock, coffee in hand, staring out at the ocean like it might answer something. And then, it did. At first, it was just a shadow under the surface. Long silent, moving without waves. Then, A low hiss broke the calm as black metal breached the water like a sea creature coming up for breath. Jack dropped his mug. A submarine, massive, sleek, unmarked, surfaced 40 feet from his dock.
No flag. No insignia.
Just matte steel and menace. The cabin opened. 2 figures emerged, both in gray, not military uniform but tactical gear, clean and precise. One held a tablet. The other scanned the coastline with mirrored sunglasses. They moved like men who'd done this before. Jack didn't move. He didn't run. But behind him, inside the cabin, Eli had disappeared. One of the men stepped off a small motor launch that detached from the sub, walking calmly up the dock. Jack met him halfway. "Private dock," Jack said flatly. "You're trespassing." The man didn't flinch. "Mr. Harper, we're looking for someone. A castaway. Possibly came ashore during last night's storm." Jack didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Storm didn't bring anything but fish guts and broken crab lines. The man smiled politely, too politely. "We have sonar logs, Mr. Harper. Our target was last pinged 300 yards off your cove. He was injured, confused, likely dangerous. For your safety, and his, we need to recover him." "Recover?" Jack echoed. "He a package now?" The man didn't respond. He just nodded to his partner, who tapped something into the tablet. Jack felt it then, that same deep humming from the night before. But now it was coming from them. Inside, Eli had moved to the back of the cabin, crouched near the fireplace, chest rising fast. He whispered into the stone. Not words, but sounds. Frequencies. Like a code. He could hear the ping now, that internal sonar they'd embedded in him. They weren't just here to retrieve him. They were here to deactivate him. Jack watched the sub, his jaw tightening. "You didn't ask if I saw a man," he said quietly. "You said, target." The suited man adjusted his collar. "He is not your concern, Mr. Harper. If he's here, hand him over. And this all goes away." Jack stepped closer. "What if I say I haven't seen him?" The man's tone sharpened just slightly. "Then we'll sweep your land and vessel for contamination, and flag your property for national security interest. You won't stop us." That's when Jack made his choice. "Then maybe you'd better bring more than 2 suits next time." He turned his back and walked away. Back in the cabin, Eli stood now, shaking. "They've locked on. I can feel the pull, like they're reactivating the failsafe." Jack looked him over. "Failsafe?"
Eli nodded.
"If I stay within proximity for too long, they can trigger internal shutdown. Seizure. Death. The body disappears. Like it never existed." Jack grabbed his coat. "Then we need to get you moving." Outside, the sub's sonar began to pulse across the water, visible ripples in the surface. Jack's lights flickered. His dog barked furiously. The agents moved toward the cabin, not running, just advancing, like a sweep. Eli slipped out the back through a hidden hatch Jack had used for years to store fuel and old tools. They followed a moss-covered path down to a hidden cove Jack had cleared years ago. "Why are you helping me?" Eli asked, panting from the pain in his legs. Jack handed him a bag, old hiking gear, sealed rations. "Because I've seen what happens when men with secrets come for people like you."
Eli paused.
"They won't stop." Jack gave a wry smile. "Neither will I." Seconds later, the front door burst open. The agents searched the cabin in silence. One scanning, one tapping commands into a small black device. "He was here," one muttered. "His signal's decaying. He's moving." But it was too late. Eli was gone. And now, they knew they'd been outplayed by a fisherman. One who wasn't just watching from the sidelines. Jack didn't look back. He didn't need to. The submarine was still there, still waiting, like a predator circling in the deep, biding its time. But Jack didn't care about their threats anymore. They had made a mistake. And Jack Harper never let anyone forget their mistakes. Eli staggered ahead, clutching his side as the pain from his old wounds flared. Jack stayed close behind, navigating the dense forest toward the hidden cove he had used for decades. The night air was heavy, each step breaking the silence with the sharp crack of twigs underfoot. The sound of the submarine's sonar rippled through the trees, getting closer. "They know we're leaving," Eli hissed, glancing over his shoulder. "They've activated everything. They'll hunt us until there's nothing left." Jack gritted his teeth. "Then we make sure there's something left." They reached the cove. A narrow passageway led down to a small inlet, hidden from view. But the feeling of being hunted, that wouldn't go away. Jack led Eli to the cabin that had once been a refuge for his late wife, Lila. Tucked under the shade of thick pine trees, hidden from anyone who dared look too closely. Eli stumbled in after him, looking out the small window to where the sea met the sky. "This won't work," Eli said, his voice low. "They've probably already tapped into everything, the phones, the radios, the satellites. It's only a matter of time." Jack didn't respond. He was pulling the emergency gear from a closet, preparing supplies for the long road ahead. "You don't get it," Jack said finally. "You've been running for too long, and I've been hiding for years. You think it's going to be easy?" Eli shot him a bitter glance. "I didn't ask for this." Jack paused, looking at him for a moment. Nobody asks for a lot of things. They sat for a long moment, the fire crackling between them. Jack felt the weight of everything he'd carried for years. The guilt, the loss, the loneliness. And Eli felt it too. The cold, the endless running, the fear of not knowing who he was. Jack finally stood, moving to the small wooden table. He set out 2 papers. One had coordinates, the other had a name. Project Leviathan. Eli looked up sharply. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. "That's where they kept you." Jack pushed the paper closer to him. "It's the key. The reason you're being hunted. You're not just a man, Eli. You're a weapon." Eli's eyes darkened. "And you think you can stop them?" he asked bitterly. "I can't, but we can expose them." Jack moved to the window and stared out at the dark horizon. "You want to keep running? Or you want to end this?"
Elias guts hardened.
He took a deep breath, his fingers twitching near the military tattoo on his chest. "I want to end it." The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Eli helped Jack, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating, preparing. The man he once was still there. Deep down, a soldier who had lived through more than anyone should have to. And Jack? Jack knew he couldn't hide forever. They had to face what was coming. And they had to choose. Just as dawn broke, the submarine's sonar hit their safe house. Close. Too close. Jack could feel it. The walls were closing in. They had no more time. Eli grabbed the bag of supplies, slinging it over his shoulder. Jack followed him, moving swiftly but silently. The 2 of them crept through the trees, heading toward the cliffs. There, a small motorboat sat waiting, hidden from view. But as they reached the water's edge, a sharp whistle cut through the air. They froze. 2 men in black suits emerged from the shadows. The same agents from the submarine. They moved quickly, cutting off their escape. "I was hoping we could talk, Mr. Harper," one of them said smoothly, holding up a gun. "But I see you're still not willing to listen." Jack's hand twitched, his fingers brushing the grip of the handgun he kept on his belt. "I told you before. I'm not handing him over." The agent smiled, a cold, predatory look. "That's the thing, Mr. Harper. It's not about what you want anymore." The world seemed to slow. Eli turned to Jack, his voice barely a whisper. "We can end this. Together." Jack nodded once, sharp and final. It all happened in a heartbeat. Eli sprang into action, moving faster than Jack had ever seen. He disarmed the first agent in one smooth motion, knocking him to the ground with a well-placed strike. Jack followed, tackling the second agent, knocking him into the rocks. The first agent pulled a knife, aiming for Eli. Eli caught the blade midair, twisting it from his attacker's hand. With a decisive move, he incapacitated the agent, leaving him on the ground, groaning. Jack stood, panting, watching. "No more running," Eli said, breathing hard. Jack nodded. They were done hiding. By the time the authorities arrived, it was too late. Eli and Jack were already on the boat, racing toward the horizon, where freedom lay beyond the reach of those who hunted them. As the sun rose, Eli looked back at the distant coast, the place where his life had almost ended, the place where he could now begin again. Jack turned the boat into the wind, knowing they had made the hardest choice of their lives. But it had been the right one. The sea was still. Eli sat in the small boat beside Jack, the salt water spraying lightly in the breeze. The world felt lighter now. Not easy, not free, but lighter, like they had finally taken back something they never knew they had lost. They weren't looking behind anymore. The submarine, the agents, all of it was in the distance, fading away. There would be no turning back, no going home, for either of them. But there was something else now, hope. A new chapter, forged through fire and sacrifice. They crossed into open waters, the coast behind them fading into the horizon. The boat cut through the waves with a quiet hum, and for the first time, Jack realized how much he hadn't been living. For the past years, it had been just survival. He had avoided real moments, avoided connections. The painful loss of his son had driven him into solitude, hiding in the silence of the sea. Now, with Eli beside him, Jack didn't feel alone. The weight of the past was still there, but he had chosen to carry it. Eli, too, was a man who had lost everything. His memories, his identity, his past life. Yet, the fire in his eyes told Jack everything he needed to know. The man still had a will to survive. They both did. Hours passed, and the sun sank low, casting an orange glow over the water. They had no clear destination, only the promise of freedom wherever it would take them. But as they reached the farthest edge of their journey, a faint blip appeared on Jack's radar. His brow furrowed. "Who's this?" Jack muttered, squinting toward the horizon. Eli shot him a wary glance. "I don't know. We need to keep moving." But Jack's curiosity got the better of him. He slowly turned the boat toward the source of the signal. As they approached, the shape of an old cargo ship emerged through the fog. The ship was much larger than anything Jack had ever seen in the area, and it was moving fast. The ship's hull was painted in a neutral gray, a ghost ship.
No markings, no lights.
But a clean, unmarked vessel. It was almost like a shadow, blending with the mist. As they neared, Eli's hand went instinctively to his jacket pocket, where his phone had been stashed for the past few days, just in case. "We shouldn't get any closer," Eli said, his voice low. Jack hesitated. The boat's engine hummed steadily, but something in the air felt wrong. Before Jack could pull back, a voice boomed from the ship's speaker. "This is Commander Hill of the USS Eclipse. You've been located. Please prepare to board." Jack froze. Commander Hill. The same voice that echoed through his mind from the day Eli had entered his life. Eli's eyes widened, and for a moment, Jack could see the cracks, the fear behind his calm demeanor. "I knew they'd find us, but not like this," Eli muttered, clenching his fists. Jack took a deep breath. "What is this ship?" Jack asked quietly. Eli didn't speak for a long while. The ship grew nearer, its massive hull casting a shadow over them. Finally, he answered, his voice strained. "This is the Eclipse, the military's last resort for tracking down people like me. They can find anyone, erase anyone, and make sure the world never knows." Jack looked at him. "You mean, they've been hunting you this whole time?" Eli nodded. The pain in his eyes said everything Jack needed to know. But then, a strange look crossed Eli's face. It wasn't fear anymore. It was resignation, a sense of acceptance. "We've made it this far. I'll go. Alone. You don't need to be a part of this anymore." Jack turned his head, surprised by the offer. "I didn't do this for anything but the right thing." "This isn't your battle anymore, Eli," Jack said firmly. "It never was." Jack knew what he had to do. The truth would come out, It had to. Eli needed to face the people who made him, and maybe, just maybe, they would finally expose the truth. The world needed to know what had been happening in secret. Jack wasn't going to let Eli take the fall alone. Not now. Not after everything they had been through together. Jack adjusted the throttle, speeding up toward the eclipse. Eli's eyes met his. Jack saw the faintest smile there, as if he knew this moment would come. There were no more secrets. They were both exposed. "You're not alone," Jack said quietly. "I'm with you, Eli, no matter what happens." And for the first time in years, Eli let out a deep breath. It was the first sign of peace Jack had seen in him. As they boarded the Eclipse, the agents and commanders greeted them, but this time they weren't enemies. They were partners in exposing the truth. They had come a long way. Jack, from the silent fisherman who'd shut off from the world after losing his son. Eli, from a ghost of military secrets and forgotten identities. The sunrise broke over the water as the Eclipse sailed away, leaving the past behind them. Jack had learned one thing. Sometimes it takes the darkest places to find the light. And no matter how deep the sea tried to swallow them, they had survived. What would you have done if you were Jack? Would you have helped Eli knowing what was at stake? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story of courage, mystery, and survival, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the next one. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.